6:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Catherine Pereira and read by Lavani Vijayatunga. First, we take a look at the headlines. Reopening of schools has been postponed until the 7th of this month. Dhamma schools, cinema halls and children parks to be closed until further notice. Permission will be given to conduct weddings only until Monday. The number of COVID patients has risen further. It has been emphasized that the national security in the country has been strengthened. And in news overseas, over 18th vaccination drive hit by shortages in India. Those were the headlines, and now move on to the details of the local news. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa says that as promised to the people, the government has safeguarded national security and sovereignty. Similarly, the government has ensured that no harm will befall on our national legacy and heritage. Steps are being taken to implement policies for the growth of local industries and agricultural-based economies. A clear, well-defined economic plan has been formulated and implemented to eradicate poverty, which is the biggest burden faced by a substantial segment of the working class. The President in his May Day message said that the working community is one of the most adversely affected groups in the world due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The government has clearly understood the reality faced by our working masses. Hence, the government is working with a commitment to ensure better living standards for its citizens without imposing limitations that obstruct the economic activities of the working people. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, issuing the message to mark the May Day, appreciated the commitment and efforts of the working people towards achieving socio-economic development even in the face of an unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. In his message, the Premier said the International Workers' Day, which was started to win the workers' rights, is the greatest day of the working people. The commitment made by the working masses for the betterment, not only for their country in general, but for the world as a whole, has always been highly commendable. As we all know, International Workers' Day is a day to show the world the strength and unity of the working masses. During this May Day, celebrated under the theme, A People-Friendly Workplace, a Safe Country, he said that he firmly believes that the working masses will work together to uplift the local economy. The Premier added that he extended his gratitude for the contribution in controlling the pandemic. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa in his May Day message said that the working class is facing extreme circumstances due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation, while the government is only pursuing its own political agendas. The message added that this time, the May Day comes at a time when the entire human race is in the midst of catastrophe caused by the coronavirus. The world has been suffering this pandemic for 2 years. It is difficult to find a time in the country, at least in the last century, when the world economy has been so severely affected. As a result, the working class has become increasingly vulnerable. Billions of people have lost their jobs and their daily lives are in a complete disarray. Media Minister Kelly Rambukwala says that the dedication of the working people is most respectful at the moment of tragedy faced by the whole world. He said the government has contributed its utmost to fulfill the rights of the working people even amidst a pandemic. JVP leader Andrew Kumar Dissanayake says that the working people have to celebrate this year's May Day in the face of severe challenges in the history of the country. According to the new COVID-19 health guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health, all cinema halls and children parks have been advised to remain closed until further notice, the National Operations Centre for Prevention of COVID-19 Outbreaks said. Army Commander General Shavindra Siva said all events, including weddings, would not be allowed for a period of 2 weeks from Monday. He said that this decision was taken considering the alarming increase in the number of COVID-19 cases. This is the news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
Receive early cash advances and an unmatchable bonus at maturity from Sri Lanka Insurance Early Cash.
And we continue with more local news. The number of COVID patients in the country has increased to 108,146. 11,493 are receiving treatment in hospitals. 95,975 have recovered. The reporting of COVID patients is increasing and Sri Lanka has become the third in terms of global recoveries of patients. Meanwhile, 9 employees of the Lakshapana power plant have been infected by the coronavirus. The Ministry of Health has received a batch of cold chain equipment procured by UNICEF with the funding from the government of Japan to strengthen Sri Lanka's vaccination program. The Health Ministry said 500 vaccine carriers were handed over to the Minister of Health, Pavitra Manyarachi, by UNICEF Sri Lanka representative Emma Brinkman and Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, Suriyagama Akihara, at the UNICEF office. A national program to provide turmeric plant to each home garden has begun. The turmeric plants will be distributed to 1.5 million families. The objective of this move is to fulfill the turmeric needs from their home gardens. Inaugurating the program, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa planted a turmeric plant at his residence in Mirihana this morning. And to conclude the local news, the headlines once again. Reopening of schools has been postponed until the 7th of this month. Dhamma schools, cinema halls and children parks to be closed until further notice. Permission will be given to conduct weddings only until Monday. The number of COVID patients has risen further. It has been emphasized that the national security in the country has been strengthened. And that was the local news.
Finished? You have 1 more hour to write the exam.
Yes, sir. Always early.
Receive early cash advances and an unmatchable bonus at maturity from Sri Lanka Insurance Early Cash.
A mother knows the pain of each member of the family. Siddhalepa, the trusted relief for aches and pains.
An effective therapy for relief from cold, sneezing, flu, headaches, swelling due to toothaches, rheumatic, discomforts, and muscular aches and pains. Siddhalepa, the Vidya Mahatmya in every home.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vidya Mahatmya.
The main news story for this evening, all Buddhist Dhamma schools will be closed until further notice due to the prevailing COVID-19 situation in the country, the Commissioner General of Buddhist Affairs, Sunanda Karyaperuma, announced. The decision comes after the government's move to postpone the reopening of all schools island-wide until the 7th of May. Accordingly, Dhamma schools will reopen on the first Sunday that follows the resumption of the academic activities in schools, the Commissioner General further said. Meanwhile, the Bishop's House announced that all countrywide Catholic schools will remain closed until the 7th of May. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vidya Mahatmya. Brush your teeth twice a day for healthy teeth and gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, your trusted brands in oral care for many years.
Supiriviki Ayurvedic toothpaste for adults. Kakulu Ayurvedic toothpaste for kids. 9 Ayurvedic ingredients of Supiriviki will protect your teeth and strengthen your gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, products from Siddhalepa.
And in Washla this evening, passengers complained that the public bus stand in Balapitia is deteriorating. A large number of people travel from this place to Colombo and other areas. They said another problem is that the buses do not operate as per a timetable. They request the relevant authorities to renovate this bus stand soon. This is for the attention of the governor of the southern province. From that, we move on to the headlines of the world news. Over 18's vaccination drive hit by shortages in India. Israel mourns as festival stampede victims were identified. Afghanistan car bomb kills 30 at a guest house in Logar province. Those are the headlines, and now we move on to the details of the world news. India has become the first country to report more than 400,000 new coronavirus cases in a single day as its nationwide vaccination drive launches amid a supply crisis. Some 3,523 deaths were officially recorded in the past 24 hours, but the real figure is thought to be far higher as many fatalities go unreported. As of today, all adults in India are eligible to be vaccinated. But several states say that they do not have the doses to carry out the exercise. The country is facing acute shortages of medical oxygen and hospital beds as a devastating second wave of coronavirus batters its health system. The bodies of 32 people killed in a stampede at a Jewish pilgrimage site have been identified in Israel. At least 45 people have died in the stampede at the La Bohème festival in near Mount Meron, where they became trapped in an overcrowded passageway. Some 150 people were injured. The identification process was paused for 24 hours late yesterday to mark the Sabbath, the Jewish day of rest. The work is expected to resume after sunset today, which ends the Sabbath. So far, 22 bodies have been released for burial. High school students are among the 30 people killed in a car bombing in Afghanistan, local officials say. The bomb went off yesterday close to a guest house where students were reportedly staying in Pulliam and the eastern capital of Logar province. Dozens of people were hurt. Witnesses described roofs collapsing and victims trapped under the debris. No group has said it was behind the blast as people broke their fast in the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. And to conclude the world news, the headlines once again. Over 80s vaccination drive hit by shortages in India. Israel mourns festival stampede as victims were identified. Afghanistan car bomb kills 30 at a guest house in Logar province. That was the world news, and we move on to development news. Religious places with many shortcomings in the Galle district will be developed. Under this program, 41 viharas are to be developed. Renovation activities of 18 viharas have already begun. 5 million rupees will be spent for the development activities. With that, we move on to sports news. Sri Lanka team has scored 17 runs for the loss of 2 wickets in their second innings at the close of the third day of the second test match played against Bangladesh team at Pallekele International Stadium. Bangladesh were all out for 251 runs in their first innings. In their first innings, Sri Lanka scored 493 runs for the loss of 7 wickets and declared. Accordingly, Sri Lanka leads by 259 runs. That was the sports news. Business news coming up.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply. Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money.
In business news, regulations issued under the Foreign Exchange Act No. 12 of 2017 have been revised for the further simplification and clarity improvement with the objective of achieving greater efficiency in the conduct of cross-border foreign exchange transactions alongside further facilitating economic activities of the stakeholders through greater convenience of doing business. These revised foreign exchange policy frameworks, as highlighted above, has been implemented with effect from 22nd March 2021. That was the business news. Economic news follows.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money. Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
Economic news. Courtesy of
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act No. 42 of 2011.
And in economic news, treasury bills worth over 45 billion rupees will be issued. The central bank says that the relevant auction will be held on the 5th of this month. Biddings are being called from the primary dealers on government securities. The treasury bills could be purchased from the primary dealers and licensed commercial banks. That was economic news and the weather report to conclude.
I bought my daughter a laptop for her work by managing my finances. Whatever the expenses may be, I can't afford to miss out on life's special moments like her birthday or our anniversary. So you need to invest to make your family's future flourish.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibilities. That's why we promise to give you the best returns on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act No. 42 of 2011.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
And finally, the weather report. The Met Department says showers or thunder showers will occur in most parts of the island during the evening or night. Fairly heavy falls, about 75 millimeters, can be expected at some places in the western, Sabrakamua, central, southern and Uva provinces. And that was the weather report.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
And before we conclude this bulletin of news, let's get back to the headlines once again. Reopening of schools has been postponed until the 7th of this month. Dhamma schools, cinema halls and children parks to be closed until further notice. Permission will be given to conduct weddings only until Monday. The number of COVID patients has risen further. It has been emphasized that the national security in the country has been strengthened. And in news overseas, over 18's vaccination drive hit by shortages in India. And with that, we conclude this bulletin of news. And now it's back to your Saturday evening host today, Sabrina, to keep you entertained.